The story begins with a tragic ending. The main character is a simple vessel, just a skull and a skeleton, white and weathered, a representation of death itself. And he dies. His mistress is a succubus lady who has been pierced by a sword right now. He couldn't protect her. At this moment, his neck is broken with a shield, and the skull flies off to the barely alive body of the girl. He sees how the sparkle in her eyes has gone out and, wanting revenge, he attacks the offenders. Before dying again, he wants to become stronger, and at that moment he hears a strange sound. He woke up in a hole in the ground, thinking that the place looks somehow familiar. The skeleton looks at the pop-up notification window. Suddenly, he is interrupted by a girl's scream. She introduces herself as Rubia and says that it was she who woke the hero from a dream. Then he remembers that 20 years ago it was she who resurrected him in the form of a skeleton warrior. Thus, he returned to the past 20 years ago. Once again, remembering the past, he realized that this girl who resurrected him would soon be killed by bandits. Remembering his succubus mistress, the main character makes a decision for himself. He throws her over his shoulder and tells her that he will protect her from now on. After a while, a notification window appears, which indicates information about the beginning of the Ray Rubia S-class script. Ray Rubia, the girl's full name. When a girl tries to say something to the main character, a noise is heard in the neighborhood. The couple decide to hide, and two men on horseback appear on the trail. Then the skeleton remembers that 20 years ago the girl did not just die, she was killed. Even the appearance of strangers suggests that they are not just bandits, they are professional mercenaries. But what do they need girls? It turns out that the girl is the rightful heir of the Lord. Having said that, an arrow hits her shoulder. The mercenaries only pretended to leave. The second mercenary immediately approached and decided to abuse the prisoner. At the same moment, a skeleton hits him from behind with a stone. He holds out his hand to the girl and immediately gets a hammer on the skull. The hero has left the light again, and at the same second he wakes up and finds Rubia greeting him. It all started over again. He kept all his memories. But this time the hero gets a memorial, the opportunity to choose a characteristic. He tells the girl to hide behind a stone, and he takes the blade from her. This time he kills a man with a crossbow by hiding in a ground pit and jumping out on him from behind. He raises the level. Remembering the man with the huge axe, he immediately gets hit on the skull. So he died again. After being resurrected, he siphons off all the points for killing a mercenary with a crossbow and dexterity. The next time he did get a man with a hammer, but he got an arrow in the skull. And finally, for the fourth time, he kills the mercenaries. After so many deaths, he was able to protect Rubia. The main character understands that in case of death, he returns to the moment of his summoning, starting from the first level. But his skills and characteristics are preserved, and if he succeeds before death, he receives a new ability through the memorial. His thoughts are interrupted by a girl who tells him about her life. Her father was a feudal lord, and her mother died during childbirth. Then, a few weeks ago, the heir to the throne ascended to the throne. He immediately began to incite wars, strengthened the military power of the army in the form of aggression, and the lower nobles who stood in his way were killed. One of these nobles was the girl's father. The main character again promises her his protection. Seeing the light at the end of the cave, the heroes rush there. They come out of the cave and see mountains of snow. After receiving a snowball, the skeleton and the necromancer continue their journey, climbing over the mountains, protecting each other, helping each other. They finally get to Ublam, a small town. Approaching the walls of the city, Rubia tells the skeleton that now it's her turn to protect him. She asks him to stay outside the gate, and she will try to find him some armor. The girl says goodbye to her defender and leaves. An hour passed, and then another. A day followed by a second. In the end, 3 days passed, but the girl never returned. Suddenly, the skeleton hears an elderly man behind the bushes who is dumping someone's body from a stretcher. Approaching the body, the hero recognizes his companion in it. She was dead, and her body was disfigured. He couldn't protect her again. This dead body reminded him of a succubus lady, but his thoughts were interrupted by two men. From their conversation, the hero learns that his girlfriend killed herself before she was sold. One of the men wants to abuse the dead body, and when the second leaves and the other is already hanging over the body, the main character grabs a sword and sticks it in the man's back, arranging an interrogation. From him, the skeleton learns that the innkeeper brought the girl to them, and the captain of the guard ordered these two men to brutally beat her. Kneeling down, the skeleton closes the eyes of the dead body of the girl and is going to visit the city. At night, in a raincoat, he goes to the owner of the inn, intimidating, trying to get information from him. The innkeeper realized that the stranger was the companion of the girl who was killed. He tries to escape, but our hero sticks a blade into his leg. The man admits that he handed the girl over to the guards, but had no idea that they would kill her because the captain of the guards sells the girls into slavery to a certain society of necrons. After uttering the last word, a mark shone on the man's neck and suddenly a snake wrapped around his head and strangled him. Raising his head, the main character sees the shining armor. He makes a decision for himself that he needs to become even stronger in order not to lose anyone else. After a while, the skeleton went to the ghost crypt, a dungeon filled with skeletons like him. Unexpectedly, he meets a skeleton with a sword and a shield. taking off his helmet and showing that he is the same skeleton. The hero turns around and leaves, but he receives a notification about the appearance of the dungeon boss, a huge skeleton. The boss immediately kills his brother and attacks the hero. But our hero is not so easy. Of course, he gets wounded, but despite this, he overcomes his opponent, wounding him in a weak spot. He gets 5 levels at once. And then the quest begins, swing the sword 10,000 times. While the main character is training, 3 people approach the lair, a young knight and 2 girls. The skeleton receives a notification that intruders have invaded the dungeon. Inspired by the idea of impressing 2 girls at once, the knight leads them into the lair. The girl with golden hair immediately understands his intentions, but does not leave because she understands that the man's equipment is expensive, and the red-haired girl is trying to get close to him just because of his wallet. The blonde joined them with plans to kill the knight while he was fighting monsters and take his equipment. They see a huge pile of bones left over from the dungeon boss. Then, presumably, someone was already here. After a while, the main character approaches them. When he asks unwanted guests to leave, they attack him. But the skeleton strikes the knight with 1 blow, and the blonde, seeing this, begins to shine with delight. The red-haired girl was scared and decided to run away, but a dagger flies into her back. The main character thought that the blonde standing behind him and throwing a dagger missed, but it turned out that she was not aiming at him at all. She begs for mercy and then introduces herself to Renat. She says that her guild deals with murders, thefts, as well as collecting and exchanging information. When the main character is confused by the fact that the blonde killed her friend without a doubt, the girl quickly refutes his theory and says that she specifically brought those 2 here to kill. The skeleton says goodbye to the girl and is about to leave, but she asks him to stay and says that she will be useful to him. The hero is interested in the possibility of obtaining information, and he asks Renat about the Necron Society, but the girl says that information about them is difficult to get. Then she sets conditions, for which she receives a sword blade placed against her neck. The girl hints that if the skeleton kills her, she will not be able to get information since she is not a member of the guild. Joining the guild will be problematic because the hero is a skeleton. After asking about the condition of the deal, the main character is surprised because the girl wants to become allies. Suddenly, a notification window appears, which indicates the appearance of a new task: the history of Renat. A blonde distracts him from his thoughts, offering the following conditions. It provides the skeleton with information and helps with training. Without listening to her, the hero grabs the girl by the throat and says that she offers him an alliance when she killed a man a couple of minutes ago. The girl says that people do not consider her one of them, because they are only interested in her body. Exactly the same as with our main character. He is only seen as a monster to be killed. She then shares information about the Necron Society with him. This is an underground organization that is engaged in the production of contract killings and the slave trade. Unfortunately, this is all the girl knows, so she wants to make a deal with the undead. She will bring her victims to the dungeon, and the hero, killing them, will gain experience. And in return she will increase her rank in the guild. By increasing her rank, new information will be available to her and she will be able to share it. The main character agrees to the terms and they make a deal.